get started here. Thank you everyone for coming. If you're here for the Klamath Hydroelectric Project presentation, you're obviously in the right room. The purpose of this meeting today is to inform parties and receive public comment on the State Water Board's process for the Klamath Hydroelectric Project. My name is Jeff Wetzel. I'm an engineer with the State Water Resources Control Board and the Division of Water Rights. I'll introduce some of our team members also. We have Parker Thaler as our lead scientist for the project. We have Erin Ragazzi in the audience, which is our program manager. Mariana Aoi will be, there she is right there, Office of Chief Counsel, our legal support. Richard Hahn with AECom as the consultant. And then we have Tim Hemstreet from Pacificor also in the audience. And our court reporter today is Kathy Swank. Overview for today, I'll talk a little bit about logistics and ground rules. Parker will give a short technical presentation, and then we'll take comments by those in attendance, and then adjourn hopefully by 4 o'clock. Some housekeeping items. Out the back door to your left is bathrooms and water fountains if you need them. And in the case of an emergency or an evacuation, we exit down the stairs to the first floor, out the building to Cesar Chavez Park, which is kitty corner across the street. Please sign in on the attendance sheet if you haven't, and fill out a speaker card if you wish to speak. So that your comments can be correctly transcribed, please speak into the microphone over at the podium and give your first and last name with spelling. There's also a handout in the back room that directs people how to submit written comments. Also on the speaker card, there's a no oral comment checkbox if you just want to fill out the speaker card without speaking. For those of you online, there's email that you can email your questions or comments to at wr401program@waterboards.ca.gov. Questions that come in, we will try to answer those, and the comments that come in over those email, we will consider part of this scoping record. The presentation handout and meetings stuff is on our Klamath Hydroelectric Project webpage at the URL shown. Quick ground rules for today. Please respect all speakers and their points of view. One person speaks at a time, and please use the microphone. Please hold questions and comments towards the end of the presentation. It's a short presentation, shouldn't take too long. Recognize we have a short time frame to receive oral comments, so please respect your time allotted so we can hear from everyone today. Written comments are an alternative to those who wish to provide additional comments beyond their allotted time, or for those that do not wish to speak today. Some quick context before Parker gets up and talks just on why we're here today. Pacificor, the applicant for the Klamath Hydroelectric Project, submitted a water quality certification application, and the State Water Board conditions hydroelectric projects via that water quality certification application, or Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. And also the California Environmental Quality Act requires that an environmental impact report inform the State Water Board and the public about the project's significant effects and ways to reduce them. Parker, you're up.
Hello. My name is Parker Thaler, and I'm an environmental scientist with the State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Water Rights. I'm also the lead technical staff on the Klamath Hydroelectric Project, and I've been working on the project for a little over 3 years. Today I'll be providing an overview of Pacificor's Klamath Hydroelectric Project facilities, a short background of the Klamath Hydroelectric Project's Federal Energy Regulatory Commission relicensing process, a general overview of the California Environmental Quality Act, and a discussion of the State Water Board's Notice of Preparation public comment period. Shown in this slide is a map illustrating the general locations of the Klamath Hydroelectric Project facilities. This map should look a little bit familiar, as it can be found on the cover of our Notice of Preparation. Owned and operated by Pacificor, the Klamath Hydroelectric Project is located in Southern Oregon and Northern California. The Oregon Klamath Hydroelectric Project facilities include East Side and West Side, which are located adjacent to Bureau of Reclamation's Link River Dam, Keno, and J.C. Boyle. The California portion of the Klamath Hydroelectric Project from upstream to downstream includes COPCO number 1, COPCO number 2, an Iron Gate Dam located on the main stem Klamath River, and Fall Creek Diversion Facility located on Fall Creek, a tributary to the Klamath River. Iron Gate Dam is the most downstream Klamath Hydroelectric Project facility and is the current limit of anadromous fish passage on the Klamath River. Today's focus is on the California portion of the Klamath Hydroelectric Project, as that is the portion of the project subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. For context, the state of Oregon also has a water quality certification application for the Klamath Hydroelectric Project, which is a separate action than what we are discussing today. Now that I've provided information on the Klamath Hydroelectric Project's general facility locations, I think it's appropriate to briefly provide background information on the Klamath Hydroelectric Project's progress through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, relicensing process. FERC is the federal agency that issues termed licenses to hydroelectric projects for construction and operations. Licenses are often issued with conditions or measures that a project operator must follow in order to protect environmental and public resources. Licenses typically last between 30 to 50 years. So beginning in 1956, FERC issued PacifiCorp's predecessor its original license to construct and operate the Klamath Hydroelectric Project. The original license wasn't subject to today's environmental standards, as many of them had not been created, such as the Federal Clean Water Act and associated Section 401 water quality certification requirement. In February of 2004, PacifiCorp applied for a new license from FERC in anticipation that the original 1956 license would be expiring in 2006, as it had been issued on a 50-year term. In March of 2006, PacifiCorp filed a water quality certification application with the State Water Board. PacifiCorp's filing opened our first opportunity to condition the Klamath Hydroelectric Project for the protection of water quality and beneficial uses. In January of 2007, the United States Department of Interior and National Marine Fisheries Services provided FERC with mandatory conditions. For context, mandatory conditions are conditions issued by federal agencies in the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission relicensing process that must be implemented. In 2007, FERC issued its final environmental impact statement for National Environmental Policy Act compliance. Following FERC's issuance of an environmental impact statement, in 2008, the State Water Board issued a notice of preparation for the Klamath Hydroelectric Project and held scoping meetings. During that time, some of the Klamath Hydroelectric Project interested parties began discussions for a settlement agreement that resulted in the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement, otherwise known as the KHSA. Beginning in 2010 is where the Klamath Hydroelectric Project began to deviate from the typical relicensing process. This was a result of the development of the KHSA and a request from some of the KHSA members that the State Water Board put the water quality certification process on hold or in abeyance to provide additional time for the settlement agreement. At the request of interested parties, the State Water Board held the certification application in abeyance from May of 2010 to June of 2013. I would like to note here that the State Water Board is not a signatory to any of the settlement agreements and maintains its independent authority to condition the Klamath Hydroelectric Project for the protection of water quality. The settlement process is a separate process from the FERC relicensing process, and during the abeyance, State Water Board staff continue to participate in Klamath Hydroelectric Project-related forums, such as the KHSA Interim Measure Implementation Committee and Klamath Basin Monitoring Program. And in July of 2013, the State Water Board's abeyance lifted and the Klamath Hydroelectric Project resumed the California certification process. Following the end of abeyance, State Water Board staff have been reviewing past materials, continuing participation in Klamath Hydroelectric Project-related forums, and have been working with PacifiCorp on items such as updating the water quality certification application, obtaining current environmental data, and Sequa process logistics such as selecting a consultant or hosting these scoping meetings. And finally, on November 30th of 2015, in light of new information such as the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement's joint Sequa NEPA document, the State Water Board issued a new notice of preparation for an environmental impact report for the Klamath Hydroelectric project. And now for our Sequa discussion. The Sequa process is needed per state law. The State Water Board cannot issue a water quality certification without a final Sequa document. Information developed in the Sequa process will be used to inform the State Water Board's actions on the Klamath Hydroelectric project. We are all here today because the State Water Board has reinitiated the Sequa process for the Klamath Hydroelectric project. A typical Sequa process runs as follows. If the State Water Board is the Sequa lead agency and determines that an environmental impact report is needed, as is the case with the Klamath Hydroelectric project, the State Water Board will issue a notice of preparation and conduct scoping meetings. For the KHP, the State Water Board issued a notice of preparation on November 30th, 2015, and we are currently in the comment period, which will end on January 29th, 2016. Following the notice of preparation public comment period, the State Water Board will review all comments received in addition to other available information and use that information to prepare a draft environmental impact report. Here's a list of the typical resource areas we evaluate during the Sequa process for development of an environmental impact report. This information was taken from our notice of preparation. Some of these items were evaluated in FERC's EIS and the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement's joint Sequa NEPA document. To the extent possible, we plan to use that information. Following the development of a draft EIR, the State Water Board will issue the draft EIR with a minimum 30-day public comment period. The draft EIR will include items like a detailed description of project alternatives, mitigation measures to reduce impacts to resources, and a description of environmental baseline conditions. Similar to the notice of preparation portion of the Sequa process, the State Water Board will consider all comments received and issue a final environmental impact report. Following issuance of the final environmental impact report, the State Water Board will take an action on PacifiCorp's water quality certification application. The objectives we proposed for review with the Klamath Hydroelectric project and alternatives are as follows. Modify the Klamath Hydroelectric project as needed to comply with California water quality standards in conformance with mandatory conditions established as part of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission relicensing process. And continue to generate power from a renewable resource to serve Klamath Hydroelectric project customers to the extent compatible with water quality standards and mandatory conditions established as part of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission relicensing process. If a water quality certification is issued and FERC issues the Klamath Hydroelectric project a license, conditions in our water quality certification become mandatory conditions. Our Sequa approach is to focus on the California portion of the Klamath Hydroelectric project. Use FERC's EIS and the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement's joint Sequa NEPA document in the development of our environmental impact report. Use information gathered by the settlement agreements, tribes, PacifiCorp, scientific community, Sequa commenters, and others. The alternatives we've identified include a range from PacifiCorp's project as proposed in the water quality certification application, which is continued operations with additional environmental measures, plus our addition of mandatory conditions, to full main stem Klamath Hydroelectric project facility removal. Other alternatives include implementation of settlement agreement measures, FERC staff's alternative, and partial facility removal scenarios. All comments received during the comment period will be reviewed. Some of the key items we are interested in hearing from the public are adequacy of FERC's EIS and the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement's joint Sequa NEPA document. In other words, do these documents address your concerns or comments? The range of alternatives or specific alternatives that should be considered, potential impacts to evaluate, and any other items that you feel is relevant to this process. We are holding 4 scoping meetings that we posted in local newspapers, in addition to hard copy and email mailings out to our distribution lists. I've included the information up here in case anyone else needs it. It's also in our notice of preparation. If you would like to provide written comments, please provide them prior to January 29th, 2016 to the physical or email addresses shown here. Also, I've included a link to our project webpage, which is a great resource available to the public. On our webpage, we post updated Klamath Hydroelectric project information, such as PacifiCorp's water quality certification applications or our notice of preparation. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to Jeff for the comment and question portion of today's meeting. Thank you.
So before we get into the comment period, I wanted to offer up this as a short question and answer session, basically just off of our process. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to take answers.
Wondering if you have Russ Gantz. I was wondering if you have timelines for projected issuance of the draft EIR.
Not specific or concrete timelines. I think the average CEQA process probably takes somewhere about 1.5 to 2 years, and this is going to be a fairly complicated, controversial project. The timeline also will be dictated about the comments that we get during the scoping process and the type of analysis that needs to be done. And then also comments that we get on the draft EIR and its adequacy will probably ultimately determine its timeline. But I think maybe 2 years or a little over 2 years is a rough ballpark of a timeline.
Will the Oregon entities, my name is Ronald Stork with Friends of the River. Will the Oregon entities responsible for issuing 401 certs for these projects also be doing a similar evaluation and process, and how do you expect to coordinate with them?
The Oregon Department of Water Quality will be doing their certification process. They obviously don't have to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, and we will coordinate with them. And it's my understanding that they still hold the process in abeyance currently. So we'll coordinate with them and try to move forward. Any other questions? Are there any other speaker cards that you guys can give to Peter? Does he have all of them compiled? So we'll move into the comment section. You guys can walk up to that podium over there. There's a little push button on the microphone, and we will start the comments. On the first comment by Dana Colgrove, and on deck will be Ronald Stork. And if you could do first and last name with spelling for the court reporter, please.
First and last name? Dana Colgrove, D-A-N-I-A-C-O-L-E-G-R-O-V-E. And I had a comment and a question. Excuse me. My question was, this abeyance has been going on for years and years. When are we gonna have quality water in our river? And my other question was to Mr. Pacific Corps back here. Are you guys still on the track for 2020 for dam removal? I forgot the gentleman's name. And also, I was kind of like wondering about with the question this gentleman had too about the time frame with this, because our river is dying. It's like our lifeline, and we can't do this forever. I really didn't come to comment. I kind of came to listen at this point, but I will see you guys on the river in a couple days, a week. And there's going to be way more than just me there, so be prepared.
For some of your questions, maybe after this week, you kind of rendezvous and sit down. Yeah. Next up after Ronald will be Tim Hayden.
My name is Ronald Stork, and I'm with the conservation staff of Friends of the River. Stork spelled like the bird. This has been a long journey. I think all of us think it's too long. Friends of the River was one of the settlement negotiators and a licensing participant for the duration of those processes until the settlement agreement was signed. We did not sign the settlement agreement largely because we thought that the United States Congress was likely to be dysfunctional and not capable of ratifying the settlement agreement. As you know, so far the United States Congress has not been functional and capable of ratifying the settlement agreement. So I want to congratulate the board for stepping up, ending the abeyance of its processing of the 401 water quality certification, and getting on with the business that it expected to undertake quite a few years ago. So thank you again for doing so. And I certainly hope that you can encourage the folks in Oregon to undertake a complementary and similar analysis so that both states' water quality certifications can be internally consistent with each other and hopefully consistent with the broad outlines of the settlement agreement, which called for the removal of the dams in question here on the Klamath River. I think, as you know, the alternative contained in the SWRCB EIS, which included mandatory conditions for fish ladders, but did not remove the dam, seems to be unlikely to meet the water quality requirements in this very hurt and injured river. So I'm hopeful that the alternatives, which is the heart of the analysis, will include alternatives that are complementary to the broad outlines of the settlement agreements and result in removal of the dams and at least a lessening of the adverse water quality conditions on this river. As you know, you are unable to deal with, at least immediately, some of the issues associated with the Klamath project upstream, and I urge you not to wait to a final resolution of those water quality issues because this process has gone too long and we need to move parts of it along as much as we can. We'll be submitting some written comments, and we hope that you are that these will be helpful to you. And I think that you can rely on a large amount of expertise and interest in the years that this process is going on to move your process forward expeditiously. Thank you.
Brian Johnson's on deck.
Hello. Hi, my name is Tim Hayden. I'm the Natural Resources Division Lead for the Yurok Tribe. I oversee the Yurok Tribe's fisheries, forestry, watershed, and environmental programs. I'll keep my comments brief. The Yurok Tribe, we do plan on attending other public scoping meetings, I believe in Arcata, in Wairika. So we will be providing more extensive verbal and as well as detailed written comments. But I'd just like to say that we support the California and Oregon Water Board's permitting process. As I mentioned, we plan to engage the process. We want to, the Yurok Tribe, as you know, have federally recognized fishing rights on the lower Klamath River. We're the largest single harvester of Klamath Trinity River fall Chinook salmon, and it's a hugely important cultural resource for the tribe. So we have a lot at stake, and certainly a strong interest in supporting this process. I'd just like to say, the Yurok Tribe is committed to dam removal by 2020. We're going to continue to work with our partners, and certainly through this process to make sure that that happens. So with that said, we look forward to working with the board, supporting the process. We're hopeful to provide our expertise, our experience on the river, support the process through data analysis, interpretation, and certainly want to see this process through. So we look forward to working with the board on this process. Thank you.
Russ Gantz, next.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Johnson, B-R-I-A-N Johnson. I'm the California Director for Trout Unlimited. And I have a brief CEQA comments and then a broader comment. The range of alternatives seems to make sense to me that you're laying out. I was glad to see the reference to looking back intently at the NEPA and CEQA documents for the secretarial determination. I think you'll find that at least as far as the effects of dam removal and partial dam removal and the configurations you're talking about, things are covered very well, and hopefully we don't need to spend a lot of time or money recreating the wheel on that. More broadly, we are one of the parties to the KHSA, which is still in effect, and we believe in the principles that are contained there, and simplifying dramatically removal of the 4 main stem dams for hydro and not Keno, cost cap and certainty for the utilities, ratepayers, and doing it in 2020. Spoiler alert, it seems like Congress isn't going to help us do that through a different process, and so the parties will be back looking at that, and I'm hopeful and cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to carry out the settlement through other means and remove those programs.
Thank you. Russ Gantz, followed by Tim Sloan.
Good afternoon. It's Russ Gantz, R-U-S-S-K-A-N-Z, with the Yurok Tribe. I guess I come here today with some urgency and concern when I hear that, it might take 2 years to develop this EIR. That gives me concern. I've been working on this project for a very long time. My son, Will, right there was, I believe, 2 when I started working on this project, and he's big now. So it's been at least 16 years. The board's track record lately of getting certs issued is not good. you know, the cert for DeSable Centerville is still sitting there. I wrote that cert over 4 years ago. And that's a very important spring run salmon river. So that's a concern we have. I would urge the board to put significant resources toward this project and move it forward quickly. The Yurok Tribe is somewhat unique in that they occupy the center part of the Klamath River. They occupy a place that is the center of the world and have fished at Ishipishi Falls for at least 10,000 years. As I've worked on this project and as I actually helped develop a environmental justice pilot project with Cal EPA and the tribes, it became clear to me that what actions happen with this project will affect really the future of tribes on the Klamath River. The tribes and the fish are intertwined, and you can't unlink those. The Yurok Tribe has been an active participant in the FERC relicensing and the settlement process. Tribal members and their biologists have some really unique knowledge about the river, and they're more than happy to share that knowledge. The Water Board partnered with the Yurok Tribe on studies on nutrient cycling in Iron Gate Reservoir and on cyanotoxins. The Yurok Tribe will submit written comments, and I'm sure other tribal members will have a lot to say at some of the other meetings. So thank you.
Tim Sloan. And then lastly will be Mary Winky.
Tim Sloan, S-L-O-A-N-E. I'm with the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations. The 401 certification before the board right now is filled with several pretty glaring deficiencies, and we urge the board to address many of these and all of these in its review of the application. And specific to us today, I just wanted to point out two glaring ones. The application does not include any significant discussion of how the alternative of dam removal would impact water quality parameters in place of the theoretical mitigations in the reservoir management plan that's in the application. Dam removal is a reasonably foreseeable action. It was an alternative in the FERC EIS, and it's been subject to its own extensive analysis under NEPA and CEQA, including multiple studies demonstrating its net benefits as compared to keeping those dams in place. The other impact that we're most concerned about is the application doesn't include any significant analysis of the adverse impacts of lack of fish passage for salmon and other species, nor any discussion of the socioeconomic impacts and economics of fish passage, nor any comparisons between dams in with fish passage versus dams out entirely, nor how the reservoir's water quality or management would continue to adversely impact downstream anadromous fish. Fish passage is a mandatory condition of the FERC license, and it cannot be ignored. And we would hope that the board analyzes the social and economic impacts of each alternative on commercial fisheries downstream. We're going to submit extensive written comments along with this, but thanks for the opportunity today.
Thank you. Mary Winky.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Winky from Pacificor. It's W-I-E-N-C-K-E. I appreciate the opportunity to comment today. Pacificor remains fully committed to the KHSA. It hasn't expired or terminated, and if fully implemented, it would result in the removal of the facilities that are the subject of this proceeding. We continue to actively work with our settlement partners to implement the KHSA. And while we appreciate that the board needs to maintain an active 401 process, the current status of the KHSA makes the timing somewhat premature. As I mentioned, we'll be continuing to work with our settlement partners over the coming months to look for alternative paths to implementing the KHSA. As a result, what we request today is that the board allow the space for that to happen and allow the parties to work together to explore potential pathways that will allow for the implementation of the KHSA and balance the multiple issues surrounding With that, thank you again.
So we did hear some comments / questions from folks specifically that I want to respond to because I want to recognize those questions that were brought up. The questions that I heard were timing of water quality benefits occurring. The board wants to get water quality protections in place through its water quality certification as soon as possible. As Jeff mentioned, typical CEQA process is 1 to 2 years, and this is a complex project. We are aiming to get the draft CEQA document out in the latter part of this year and proceed with the final CEQA document the following year. So we'll see how that plays out with the level of comments we get in that process, but the idea is to move forward quickly and expeditiously on this project. And I remember there was another question. I'm going to let you follow up directly with Tim on that one because we're not the appropriate party to respond to that question. So at that point, unless anybody else has any other comments today, we have nothing online. We've been monitoring that web page or that web address. No more comments? If anybody wants to come up, ask us questions specifically or talk with us specifically about any topics, we'd be more than happy to do that. So I appreciate everybody showing up today, and we look forward to seeing many of you at the other meetings that we'll be at, which I anticipate will be more well attended than this one since they'll be in the project area specifically. So thanks again for coming out today, and we look forward to talking with you throughout the process. Thanks.